Good evening, I'm Prasad Michael and you're watching Kini News, the show that brings you today's biggest stories. Zahid Hamidi's statement on BN and Umno MPs backing Anwar Ibrahim didn't come as a surprise for Dr. Mahathir. In fact, he says he told Muhyiddin Yassin that this would happen. I told you so. That's the message Dr. Mahathir Mohamad has for Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. This comes after Umno President Zahid Hamidi admitted that many BN and Umno leaders have voiced their support for PKR President Anwar Ibrahim to form a new government. Mahathir said if Zahid's statement is accurate, Muhyiddin can no longer claim to command majority support from MPs in Parliament, since it was razor thin to begin with. In a statement released this evening, the former Prime Minister added that the priority would be to establish whether Muhyiddin still has a majority to remain as Prime Minister, and Anwar's claim that he has the numbers to form a new government is only secondary. Mahathir also revealed that he had told his former deputy from the start that this would happen. The Pejuang leader said he refused to work with an UMNO led by Zahid Hamidi and Bloc because it would mean having to accept all UMNO members, even those facing dozens of court cases. However, according to Mahathir, Muhyiddin said he was willing to work with UMNO and Bloc, even if it meant exposing him to the risk of being threatened by UMNO if they didn't get what they want. Mahathir pointed out that when Najib Abdul Razak was convicted by the High Court for 7 criminal charges related to SRC International, it was apparent that many UMNO supporters were beginning to express discontent for Muhyiddin's leadership. In today's statement, Mahathir also said should Anwar succeed in forming a new government, he will be under the influence of Zahid and Najib. Mahathir deduced that some of the UMNO MPs who are backing Anwar would certainly be Zahid and Najib's followers. Meanwhile, Bersatu Supreme Council member Azmin Ali appeared unfazed by claims that some UMNO MPs are backing Anwar. Speaking to reporters in Tawau, Sabah today, Azmin said Zahid's views were his own and contradicted those made by other BN leaders. Frustrated with the lack of development in Sabah, a former Chief Justice has urged the people of Sabah to back Warisan led by Shafi Abdal. Former Chief Justice Richard Malanjun has openly urged Sabahans to reject the state's former administration that had ruled the state for 55 years. In a video posted on social media yesterday, Malanjun said the former BN state government did little to develop the state and urged people to support Warisan.
If one is to go not that far to Pitas, or for the matter to Upper Moyong, nearby, one will see things have not changed that much, particularly in the northern region of Sabah, northern region, Pitas area. They are still as poor as before. Why? After 55 years of government by these people. And now that Dr. Shafi has been given a mandate to govern, they are not allowing it. They want to come back again. Are we to allow them to come back and continue what they've been doing to us for the last 55 years? That is the question that we must ask ourselves.
Malanjun added that Sabahans shouldn't be so easily convinced by the so-called leaders who are merely puppets of Malayan politicians, though he did not name who he was referring to.
Are we willing to let our children to suffer? We have suffered. Are we willing to let our children and our generation to come to suffer with this group continuing to rule us in that fashion? My fellow Sabahan, it is our responsibility to protect the state. It is our responsibility to protect our identity.
He reportedly also campaigned for Warisan's ally UPCO in Kota Belum on the second day of the current election campaign. Sabah goes to the polls this Saturday. The incumbent state ruling coalition, Warisan Plus, is locking horns with Gabungan Rakyat Sabah, which comprises Perikatan Nasional, BN and PBS. Non-citizens entering the country will now have to fork out over $1,000 up front. But before we get into that, here's the country's latest COVID-19 situation. Malaysia reported 71 new COVID-19 cases today, of which 2 were imported, while the remaining 69 were local infections. Sabah continues to account for most of the local cases, with 63 out of the 69 new local cases. The country's second largest ever COVID-19 cluster, the Benteng LD cluster, which saw large increases in recent days, only recorded one case today. However, there are 1,754 individuals still waiting for test results in the Benteng LD cluster out of the over 10,000 who have been tested. The number of cases in the Benteng LD cluster now stands at 730. Meanwhile, the Bangau cluster in Sampurna has recorded 47 new cases. The cluster was first reported on September 22nd following a pre-admission screening at Sampurna Hospital. The Laut cluster in Kunak reported 10 new cases. Meanwhile, Senior Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob announced today that all non-citizens returning to Malaysia are now required to pay 4,700 ringgit on arrival starting today. The fee covers fixed operating charges and hotel expenses for the mandatory 14-day quarantine that all retainees are subjected to. The government will implement the charges on all foreign nationals entering from any of the country's entryways. Zahid Hamidi is doing what is best for UMNO, according to a party leader from Johor. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi's statement that the party will not stop its MPs from supporting PKR leader Anwar Ibrahim to form a new government is the right thing for UMNO, according to Johor UMNO leader Nur Jazlan Muhammad. In defending the party president, Jazlan said Zahid wanted to appease party grassroots who were unhappy with his cooperation with Bersatu. The UMNO president was also believed to be trying to get rid of disloyal party members who allegedly had been making deals behind his back. Jazlan was quoted by the Malaysian Insider as saying Zahid is doing the best thing for UMNO because the current Prime Minister is not from their party and the people on the ground are very unhappy that UMNO got into bed with Bersatu. The Johor politician was referring to Bersatu President Muhyiddin Yassin, who is leading the Perikatan Nasional Government that took over Putrajaya in March after a political coup that saw the fall of the Pakatan Harapan administration. Yesterday, Zahid issued a statement saying many UMNO and BN MPs have expressed support for Anwar after the opposition leader made a startling announcement that he managed to secure majority support from MPs.
Strong majority. Strong, formidable, convincing majority, not a small majority. And as I've said, I've alluded to in my earlier statement that details will only be said after an audience with the king. It's only proper that I give due respect, recognition, although a letter has been written to the king.
UMNO, which has 39 MPs, is one of the parties that support the Muhyiddin government. However, it is not officially part of the ruling coalition. Coming up next, WHO's global COVAX scheme hopes to make sure the COVID-19 vaccines can be distributed fairly. "156 countries have joined COVAX, but the WHO chief says financial and political commitment is needed to support the global vaccine scheme. A total of 156 countries have joined the global COVAX scheme, intended to ensure fair distribution of supplies of future vaccines against COVID-19, an alliance led by the World Health Organization. The goal of COVAX is to, by the end of 2021, to deliver 2 billion vaccine doses around the world. Healthcare workers will be prioritized initially, and then the most vulnerable 20% of people in every participating country, regardless of income level.
Our aim is to have 2 billion doses of vaccine available by the end of 2021. We're encouraged to see a large number of countries signing up to the COVAX facility. But we face some daunting challenges. For the ACT Accelerator to work as planned, it must be funded. So far, $3 billion has been invested. This has resulted in a very successful startup phase, but it's only a tenth of the remaining $35 billion needed for scale-up and impact.
While many lower-income nations are seeking assistance via COVAX, some richer countries have been restrained in confirming their intentions. Some of those who have secured their own future supplies through bilateral deals, including the US, do not plan to join COVAX.
We've got look at this as a huge success. When we've got 64% of the world's population as a single entity working together, that's huge progress. And as Dr. Berkeley just mentioned, there are many others that are still interested to join. So what we've managed to do, or a lot of credit here obviously to Gavi, WHO, CEPI, who've worked together on this, is to build a coalition at a time when the world has been so worried about countries going bilaterally. We now have 64% of the world's population, and this is growing still.
The Vaccine Alliance said it expected another 38 wealthy countries to join the initiative in coming days. Meanwhile, Mike Ryan, Executive Director of the UN agency's Emergencies Program, said he would follow up with the US Centers of Disease Control and Prevention after it said COVID-19 could spread through airborne particles that can remain suspended in the air and travel beyond 6 feet.
Based on the evidence, believe that there is a wide range of transmission modes. We believe the disease is predominantly or primarily spread through droplet spread and through larger droplet nuclei, but we have always said that smaller droplet nuclei can spread this disease, and that is very context driven. People crowded into a small space without adequate ventilation, where they're there for a long duration of time. In that situation, aerosol-based transmission can occur, and it has been demonstrated to occur. The question is what's driving the day-to-day transmission of the disease. And we need to stop all sorts of transmission. We need to look at all types of transmission.
The body of late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg arrived at the US Supreme Court on Wednesday and will lie in repose for members of the public to pay their respects. Mourners filed quietly past the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's flag-draped coffin outside the white marble court building on Wednesday as the United States began 3 days of tributes to the liberal icon. Hundreds of people lined up outside the court for a chance to pay their respects for the pioneering women's rights advocate who died on Friday at the age of 87. Inside the court, Ginsburg's fellow justices celebrated her life in a private ceremony.
Closer to equal justice under law, to the extent that women are now a majority in law schools, not simply a handful. Later, she became a star on the bench, where she sat for 27 years. Her 483 majority, concurring, and dissenting opinions will steer the court for decades. They are written with the unaffected grace of precision. Her voice in court and in our conference room was soft, but when she spoke, people listened.
Ginsburg's casket was then moved under the neoclassical court building's massive Corinthian columns for a public viewing due to last for 2 days. US President Donald Trump is moving quickly to nominate Ginsburg's replacement, and his fellow Republicans in the Senate say they could hold a vote before the November 3rd election. That would seal a 6-3 conservative majority on the court. Trump said he would go to court to pay his respects to Ginsburg on Thursday morning. Ginsburg on Friday will become the first woman to lie in state in the US Capitol when her casket is placed in the National Statuary Hall. The Capitol held a similar ceremony for civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks in 2005, but she lay in honor as she did not hold government or military office. Both historic events for Ginsburg, however, came with modifications due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Capitol ceremony will be limited to invited guests only, and social distancing and face coverings will be required at the courthouse. And that is all from me today. For more stories, you can go to KiniTV.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook for the latest news updates. We'll be back with more tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Prasad Michael. Thank you for watching.